Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first session of today's instalment of Interact Virtual Festival. Today's theme is Inside the Mind, and we've got three great talks coming up. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Balsamic, and all the speakers and everyone watching. Our first talk is from Nomensis Head of UX, Andy Ingle, with his talk, You're Designing for the Wrong Customer. In this talk, Andy will explain the importance of aligning both front and back-end experiences to deliver exceptional customer experience. If you've got any questions for Andy, please use the Q&A box, and I'll try to ask him as many as I can at the end. Please say hello to each other in the chat, and do let us know if there's any issues with audio or anything like that. So without further ado, I will hand over to Andy to begin.
Thanks, Henry. Well, I don't know about you, but I like to enjoy popcorn with a movie. And now that we're all living at home, what I really need is I need a microwave so that I can microwave my popcorn and I can enjoy it on the sofa while I'm watching film. And although back, my remote's not have checked it up a number of times and all like so all today for not providing the repair agent or
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. It looks like there's a few connectivity problems there. If you'd bear with us a minute, hopefully Andy can reconnect and continue his talk. He's back.
Hello, sorry. Did you lose me for a second?
Yeah. The audio went a bit funny, and yeah, it might be a bit of a connectivity problem, but thankfully you're back and you can continue.
Okay, let me bring this back up. Okay. So, I was explaining the story of Dilip and the problem that Dilip has had with his microwave. His microwave's been in for repair over a month ago, and his microwave's still not come back. I've chased it a number of times, and all you get is sorry, you have to wait. All this delay was due to negligence, not providing the repair agent with an order to proceed. What a joke. Now, Dilip may well have had a fantastic purchase experience. He may well have loved his microwave, but flaws elsewhere in his experience have clearly left him feeling angry. I'm not sure that he's going to be ordering from this brand again. So what could possibly have gone wrong? Well, Dilip clearly outlines a failure in process, not providing the repair agent with an order to proceed. So if we were to question why this had happened, what we'd be likely to find, and if we were to question why and why again, something somewhere, some interface is not working as it should. And it's these internal interfaces and what happens behind the scenes that will often enable a smooth and enjoyable customer experience. And if you think about how a customer's experience can develop, it can also start to deliver transformational business results. But if those processes fall down, as they did for Dilip, well, we can all see how he feels just from reading his review. So much of what we do focuses on the end user. Brands can spend a fortune on optimization of individual touch points, but as we all know, a customer's experience isn't just about one unique touch point. It's about a myriad of touch points that each individual encounter as they go through their journey with your organization. And although the world is hurtling towards robotics and automation, more often than not in this journey, there are going to be areas that involve people. And interestingly, whenever you talk to people that do kind of mapping of systems, they will tell you that the areas that involve people will normally be the areas that go wrong or are prone to risk. Be that as end service delivery, be that as customer support, or be that as any other area of how that customer experience is delivered, there is still a reliance on people within this process. And hey, we're all people. Sometimes you just want to speak to another person, another human being. Some brands play on the value of people, so removing people from the process isn't always the answer. Let's consider the simple process of ordering a burger. You may think it's magic that you can order a burger from your phone and it magically arrives to you on the sofa. But if you think about what's going on behind the scenes, you order the burger on the phone, that order has to be picked up by somebody, that order has to be prepared and cooked by somebody. And at least for now, until Amazon or Deliveroo have invented some kind of drone that can fly in through the window and actually deliver the burger to you on the sofa without you having to actually stand up, somebody has to also deliver it to your house. So humans play quite a role in this supply chain. And if we assume that the burger could be badly cooked, or was late delivered or delivered cold, then that's a bad experience. And that's something that you're not going to want to do again. You won't order from them again. And as brands, we're constantly trying to move customers up the CX pyramid. What we want every aspect of our brand to be enjoyable. And so our staff are playing a part in delivering this experience. Shouldn't their experience be enjoyable too? Let's think about the employee environment. So the employee environment is really made up of three key areas. Firstly, the cultural environment, and this is the feeling that employees are going to get from working for your organization. Secondly, the physical environment, the actual spaces in which people do their work. And thirdly, the key part of this environment is the technological environment, and that is the tools that you provide for people to be able to do their job. So how do you provide your staff with the best tools to do their job? And this is what I consider to be really, really interesting, what opportunities are there to connect staff with customers to further improve that customer experience? So let's have a look at what different staff tooling can make. Now, if you hadn't shopped online before March, then you probably do now, because according to the ONS, e-commerce delivered the same growth between March and July 2020 as it did across the previous 10 years. Now that is staggering growth. Just think about that for a minute. The same growth over the lockdown period. If you think back before the lockdown period, you would have to go back to when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister to give the same amount of growth. That is a crazy amount of growth. Now, online grocery sales, you can see, track the bottom line here. So online grocery sales are starting from quite a small base. But as you can see, as they hit kind of March 2020, as you might expect, the growth is pretty spectacular. So again, you're looking at probably like a doubling or plus of market. But who is able to get a delivery slot during lockdown? And even now, who can regularly get a delivery slot exactly when you want one? So this isn't a good customer experience. This is broken somewhere. So to address this chasm in customer experience, what retailers really need to do is to increase the amount of delivery slots that are available. I don't know if any of you have worked within retail, but the online delivery process has two key pinch points, and both of these typically rely on people. So for large grocery retailers, one of the pinch points is this guy who's holding some radishes. And this guy is typically known as the picker. Now, this is someone who has to go around a store or warehouse and add things to your delivery. They're basically doing your shopping on behalf. They're going around, they're picking out all of the things that you've ordered, and they have a little device with an interface on it, which typically is delivered as a kind of standardized thing that they pick up and use, and they go around and pick your order exactly how you want it. The second is the driver. The driver is the person who's going to pick that shopping up, and they're going to bring the shopping from the supermarket to your home. And they also rely on tools. They rely on tools to plan routes, organize delivery drops, manage returns, rearrange slots. So the process looks something a little bit like this. Now, if I was a supermarket and I wanted to grow online deliveries or even my revenue, I wouldn't be looking at how to optimize or increase conversion through checkout. We've got a huge portal for checkout. What I'd be looking at is how I can make my pickers and my drivers work smarter so that my overall ability to deliver increases. And if I can increase my overall ability to deliver, I can provide more delivery slots at the front end, which means I can provide a much better customer experience. The key part of delivering this work smarter is understanding who these people are, what tools they use, and what are the day-to-day challenges that they face. And if you can operate in this way, this is really transformational thinking. And what this can deliver is really transformational growth. And some of these things can be quite simple. I mean, I've worked on projects in the past in things like call centers where you might look at the forms that people are trying to fill in. And if you think about somebody who's in a call center, if they're using an out-of-the-box tool for, say, inputting name, you might say, okay, well, it says title, first name, last name. But when you observe these people actually in their roles and doing what they do, that's not how people naturally engage with people. You don't say, okay, what's your title as a start? You say, what's your name? And I would say, my name is Andy. And then what's your surname? Ingle. Okay. You might be able to ascertain that's a Mr. But if you're a female, you might be a Mrs., you might be a Miss, you could be a Sarah Baron. And typically in a conversation, people get to that field after asking first name or last name. And if you actually go and watch them trying to use these systems, they go downfield, up 3 fields, back down 4 fields. Whereas by moving 1 field to below 2 fields, you're rapidly increasing growth and the speed that people can use and operate these tools and systems. And if you can multiply those kinds of factors out by lots and lots of times, across lots and lots of people, across lots and lots of stores, these things become really, really transformational. And it's observation, understanding, delivering tools that are fit for purpose. Now, I mentioned before about the excitement of the opportunity to not only improve the tools that staff are using, but to connect staff with customers. Now, before you can do this, what you really need is you need to create an environment that will support this. So often your experience will be a little bit broken. Platforms will quite often have been built many years ago, popped up all over the place. They won't talk to each other. Customers may find themselves repeating the same information in multiple places. Banks, for example, are renowned for you being able to have an account with a bank and then have to fill in a form to apply for some other product with that bank that gives them all the information that they already have about you. And what we should be working towards here is some kind of connected environments that sit with the customer at their heart. Whereas a customer, I can engage with you through one touch point, and if I want to engage with you through another touch point, my information can be channeled and passed from one touch point to another. So, you know, if I walk into a shop to get my phone repaired and I booked it online, I would expect the details that the brand that are repairing my phone and the provider that I booked it through all have the same thing and it's all connected together. I'd expect any kind of internal stuff about my phone all to be available to them. And again, these kind of connected environments can be used to address major CX problems that you might think couldn't typically be solved through digital. Let's consider the rail industry here. So, what do you think is the #1 problem in the rail industry? Well, #1 problem in the rail industry is actually the price of tickets. And unfortunately, ticket pricing and ticket complexity isn't really something that we can do too much about. But the #2 issue, the issue that people complain about in the second largest volume in the rail industry, toilets. So one thing that the whole change in working patterns has done is that there are much less people traveling on trains. And so fortunately for a lot of us, this is becoming a much less familiar sight than it used to be. But unfortunately for this commuter Lansdowne view, that wasn't the case. Again, a bad customer experience. And when Lansdowne View is wanting to tell people about the journey that he took on GWR trains, this is what he's going to talk about. He's not going to talk about the train being on time. He's not going to talk about anything else other than the fact he needed to go to the toilet and he couldn't find a toilet to use. In fact, he got so irate with it that he even decided to put it on Twitter. The second biggest issue in rail. So how would you go about solving this problem? So the existing process, if you could call it a process, is something like this. You have a passenger and then you have a person that is manages facilities that would be responsible for cleaning toilets. Passengers have apps and tools like that there is nothing that connects them up in any way to the people that are actually cleaning the toilets. But if you could get a bit smarter about this, what you could do is you could provide those people that are doing the cleaning with some kind of tool, some kind of app, some kind of portal that they could use. So you can empower the travelers on the train. Let's just say the travelers on the train are using your regular rail app as a regular train traveler. And let's just say that app could allow a customer to report problems with the toilets. That app could even be smart enough to connect to the train Wi-Fi and tell you which train they're on and which carriage. Well, this is possible. Now, if you were to then empower your employees, the cleaners, the people that are going to be doing the work also with some kind of app that could tell them this data, pass this data over to them in a format that they could use, that would help them to identify where the problems were. What if that app could also help them to plan their day so they can move in between trains in an efficient way, able to address issues like that shortly after they're reported? Now, what you're doing here is you're introducing technology and process that is addressing major CX issues. These aren't issues with people not being able to complete forms or small pieces of digital stuff. What you're doing here is you're taking the big problems that the industry has, and you're using technology in a smart way to address and fix that through internal usage. And that is transformational CX thinking. Mapping the problem, passing data, delivering tools that are fit for purpose. Now, it won't come as any surprise to know that brands that are doing this well already are those that are kind of born in the digital age. Why would you need to have pickers when you don't even have shops? These brands were built from the ground up around digital models. And so even when staff are seen as a valuable part of the supply chain, so if you think about Uber or Deliveroo, a big part of their success is the ease in which they're able to operate and the setup that's provided to them, and the fact that the staff have as good an experience as the end users. One tech company that's made great use of the employee experience and technology to kind of bring humans and staff together is Habito. Now, for those of you that don't know, Habito is an online mortgage broker. I'm not getting commissioned or anything about this. They are an absolute joy to use. I don't know if any of you have actually gone about doing a mortgage application at all, either a remortgage or a mortgage application. But for those of you that have, you will understand that it's a fiendishly complex process, perhaps way, way, way more complex than it needs to be. So Habito were a startup just a few years ago, and now they've grown to be the UK's #1 mortgage company. I think it provided over 4 million mortgages. And getting a mortgage, as I mentioned, is a very complicated thing. Probably too much for people to do on their own. And what Habito have been able to do is they've been able to adapt the way that their business, their model operates, so that you have a virtual mortgage broker available through live chat. So you go in as a user, you're able to kind of chat with, put in all the details that you want digitally, but then there's a human being within this process that picks up that conversation. So you're not, like what a lot of banks are doing at the moment is they're trying to kind of wholly digitize these processes. And for some of these processes that are complicated things to do, people don't want that. People want some element of kind of human interaction and support to get them through things and ask questions about things they don't understand. So being able to ask questions and have a guide to the process of getting mortgage, all through a combination of live chat and what is otherwise a relatively basic interface, is an attractive proposition for people. Now, Habito's process looks something like this. So again, you've got a customer at one end and then a member of staff at the other end of this spectrum, both of whom are interfacing through digital platforms with a kind of a chat interface at the center of it. But again, what's key to making this business model work is enabling those brokers to deal with multiple inquiries at speed, a platform that gives them all the tools that they need to be able to handle those inquiries, multiple inquiries at once, and make best use of the time that they have from those people. Again, transformational thinking, understanding the customer need and delivering staff tools that can fulfill it. And don't forget, people in a lot of cases are your most expensive resource. So it makes sense to invest in them making the best use of their time. I was once having a conversation with someone who owns a bank, like a guy whose name was literally over the door of the bank. We were talking about what they were going to do with with digital, and he told me that his staff were constantly complaining that they didn't have enough time to do all the things they're being asked to do. And he thought that his staff were working at perhaps 50% efficiency. So his question was, where do I spend my money? Do I double my staff or do I invest in digital? And the answer seems simple. If you double your staff, they're still working at 50%. There are CapEx and OpEx kind of decisions to make here. And, an investment made in digital, a one-off investment, can double the effectiveness of your staff or significantly increase the effectiveness of your staff for a one-off investment. And then also every additional person that you bring on will also be working at an improved velocity. So how do you go do this? What are the tips and techniques and things that you might want to understand about improving internal tools and systems? For those of you from a UX background, this is probably not going to seem like rocket science, because by taking some basic UX principles and applying those to internal tools and doing a lot of the activities that we would typically do as UXers, we're able to make significant change and significant advantage to the way that people operate. So the first thing to do is to map your services, to understand where your team and your staff interact with your customers, and what the tools and what are they doing and at what point in time in the customer. Anyone familiar with service design is going to understand the concept of mapping services to understand front stage and backstage interactions. Now, the trick here is that in a lot of cases, when you're doing this, you'll be focused on how do we deliver a great front end interaction to our users. But don't fall into the front stage trap. Don't neglect your team. What about the backstage interactions? All right, yes, that data needs to flow to somewhere, but what's the interface that the backstage interaction has? How do the people that are using those interfaces behind the scenes deal with those inquiries, and how do they manage them in the best possible way? To be able to do this, what's really key is to actually understand who your team are. So round one, understand. So number one, map your services. So number two, understand your team. Now this might sound obvious, especially at a UX conference, but to deliver great experiences for your team, you really need to understand what they need. Observe them, talk to them, find out what is currently frustrating them, what's taking up their time. One of the common issues with delivering backstage is that you'll find that people will rely on deployed systems that do almost what they want. So people will say, well, there is a system for that or a platform for that, so we'll just put this platform in place and let these people deal with it. And whilst that might deal with a lot of the stuff and help to speed this stuff up, there's likely to be situations where people are frustrated with how they use it. They might be just not see that the system that is put in place isn't quite what they want. They can't use it right. If it just did this, if it just did that, then that would be really important for them. And as I said previously, small tweaks to those systems can make a big efficiency in the impact and the way that they're used. And if you multiply these smaller tweaks out by multiple people, by multiple customers, they start to make a big difference. So map your services, understand your team, and collaborate with your staff. So again, sounding obvious, but when we're talking here about understanding your team, when you're thinking about putting these systems in place and staff tools in place, collaborate with your team, co-design with them, involve them in the process, test your ideas with them internally, see what works and what doesn't work. Your team will be happy to tell you what they want. In a lot of cases, they're probably going to volunteer to test it for you. And they'll probably tell you how you can even improve your front stage interactions to improve for you as well. If only we were getting this extra bit of information from this form, then we wouldn't have to go back to these people and so on and so forth. So, there's a lot, again, that you can do there, working with your internal teams to be able to help them to get you to improve their working conditions. So number one, map your services, understand your team, collaborate with your staff. Finally, build towards an ecosystem. Now, this is not an easy thing to do, and certainly not an overnight fix, but this is certainly where you should be going. API strategies and microservices can connect together tech stacks that can enable more joined up customer experiences and can really help you to put a back end in place and an infrastructure in place, which you can start to add pieces to that are going to join up your customers with your staff and being able to provide some of this transformational thinking and transformational stuff that we're talking about today. Just to close, it's not always about the end user experience. Improving experience for your staff can be absolutely transformational. The internal customer experience determines the external customer experience. Build ecosystems, collaborate with your staff. Always think not only about the end user, but also about the role that your staff play in delivering their experience. So thank you for listening. Please just remember that creating great experiences for your staff contributes to the experience of your customer and can lead to transformational results for your business. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Andy. That was super interesting. If anyone has any questions, please let us know in the Q&A box or the chat function, and I can ask those to Andy. I mean, it'd be great to kind of find out from you, like are there any kind of particular sectors that you think are kind of particularly good at the moment in kind of building those kind of customer service ecosystems?
Yeah, so I mentioned kind of FMCG and groceries. I mean, I know that in certain areas, those sectors are investing heavily in those tools and systems and how they can optimize, because they've been through this process and they've realized how important this stuff is and how important this kind of supply chain and you know, improvement to B2B systems can be. And they're investing heavily in that and kind of bespoking systems of their own. So there's a lot of advancement in there. As I say, if you are more likely, if you are a new business that's kind of been set up on a new business model, some of the kind of unicorn type businesses or some of the stuff that's been launched recently, if that's the case, then you're much more likely to have a good head start on this stuff than kind of legacy businesses, because legacy businesses will typically be relying more on people. They'll be relying more on older processes. So those are the kind of businesses that I think would need to adapt. I thought it was very interesting over the kind of lockdown period, if you were engaging with kind of, so I had to engage with a number of people for different things. If you ever needed to do anything with your bank, if you were banking with someone like Monzo, their support function, for example, was set up to work in a digital first way. And being set up to work in a digital first way meant that, you know, when people weren't always available, it didn't fall over, or that the people were able to deliver what it needed effectively. When you were dealing with other places that suddenly became inaccessible, so banks that perhaps had like more of a high street presence, again, for them, that whole piece became a big challenge because they just didn't have, you know, these internal systems were not set up in a way to allow the people to operate effectively.
Awesome, thank you. Cool. We've had a question come in. How do you know when you've reached the perfect balance between serving your staff and then your user? Is it different for different industries? And is there a general rule of thumb or a formula?
I wouldn't say there's any kind of general rule of thumb or formula. What I would say is that if you are looking at how to address those bigger, what we're thinking about is like the end customer. Okay, so if the end customer has got issues in their journey, there are sometimes areas where addressing those issues in the journey can only be addressed by making that internal journey better. And so if you are delivering an outstanding front-end customer experience, then theoretically, things behind the scenes are okay. It's only when you find chasms in that experience that, one of the big things is when you find chasms in that experience that you can identify, like by changing these internal things, we can have this huge knock-on effect to end user experience. So there is a balance to be had, but I wouldn't say there's any kind of hard and fast rule. I would play it more as like, how do you use these systems to kind of deliver transformational growth, and how do you use these systems to transform customer experience and address some of the bigger issues that you would think aren't always going to be able to be addressed through digital.
Awesome, thank you very much. So I think we've had no more questions come in. I don't know if anyone has any more, then please ask it now. But if not, yeah, I'd just like to say thanks, thanks Andy. That was an awesome presentation. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. We've got 2 more presentations coming up this afternoon at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So yeah, hopefully everyone can join us then. All right, brilliant. Thanks, Andy.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.